Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for your hospitality here in Delhi. It's my first visit to this amazing city. It's my first visit to this amazing country. I bring you greetings from Cambridge, Massachusetts, and from the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. We recently brought together 30 world leaders in Government 2.0. It was last June, and I would love to share with you some of the insights that we gained. It was just a smattering of those who are active around the world in these matters, and I think that they have insights that would be helpful for all. The truth of the matter is that even as we look at the power of engagement and social media platforms, many leaders around the world don't yet really understand what it's about. And it's not just leaders, it's people of different generations and different parts of the world. But even in New York, the mayor recently said, "I don't get it," and why people want to tell others what they're doing day in, day out. Why on earth does anyone care? And the fact is that this is something that needs people need some help to understand, because there are people around the world who do get it. And I'd like to share with you a couple of stories. The first is from Brazil. The power of civic engagement and the social media platform to transform education. Claudia Costin is the Secretary of Education for the city of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And she came upon, she was appointed to that post 3 years ago. As she was leaving for vacation shortly before taking up her duties, one of her 5 daughters said, "Why don't you get on Twitter and help us stay in touch with you while you're gone?" And so she did. And as she took up her duties upon return, she found that a number of teachers had begun to follow her on Twitter. And she asked herself, why are teachers following me on Twitter? Why do they want to know what I'm doing with my day? And she realized that it was a wonderful way to communicate with teachers who were her charge. In Rio de Janeiro, the teachers had become disenfranchised. They'd become demoralized. The school population, the middle class had fled. The upper class was long gone. Public schools were a matter for poor children and poor families, and teachers were held in low esteem. Secretary Costin began to engage the teachers using Twitter, a perfectly open tool. We all know how to use it. We all know what it was. And there was no hand-wringing about the communication. There was no hand-wringing about how she could handle intemperate outbursts from teachers who had long become angered by their treatment in Brazil. And those outbursts subsided over time. She began to move from Twitter to a more broad-based collaboration around curriculum development, around teacher training, online classes, digital education. She began to mobilize support for improved infrastructure in the schools, for electricity, for air conditioning in Rio de Janeiro where there is no air conditioning, and for wireless in all the schools. She uses Twitter, and it's hard work. It takes 2 hours of her time every day, and she's constantly there, and you can see her at Claudia Costin on Twitter, and you can follow her there. She now has 10,000 followers. Nearly all of them are Rio de Janeiro teachers. This is an instance of using a commonly available tool to engage in a way important groups in a workforce who have not had that engagement, and then move that into more powerful collaboration. Education. Politics. This is Mayor Susan Fennell of the community of Brampton, Ontario, in Canada. We wonder about the use of Facebook and what that might mean. Many leaders have Facebook pages, but they're not really their pages. They have staff fill them out. They have staff answer the questions. Mayor Fennell in Brampton, Ontario, has, for several years now, had a steady presence on Facebook where she engages her constituents, again, a couple of hours a night every day of the week, in which she's able to communicate widely with all of the diverse groups who want to come and do business in Brampton, build the infrastructure of Brampton. Here she is. She runs for re-election from time to time, and she uses it for competitive advantage in politics as well. In Portugal, we see Gov 2.0 platforms that focus on improved governance. Simplex was introduced to the nation by the government of Portugal as a way to simplify the complex red tape and procedures of government bureaucracies several years ago. How does it work? Civil servants nominate initiatives, and the citizens get to vote on them. And those who do vote raise the initiatives to the top. Those, if they're positive votes, or the initiatives stay low down, and then they're initiated. Things like simplified licensing regimes, reducing the number of procedures, expanding the use of digital signatures. So here are 3 examples from around the world of leaders using digital media, some just very open platforms in combination with other platforms that they will use, and others with customized development like Simplex to engage and promote dialogue with workforces and the public. And yet there are lots of questions, as the minister noted just a moment ago. Won't the loudest voices drown out the democratic voice online? Won't they? Isn't there a prospect for danger there? My own view is no. My own view is that there's plenty of opportunity for many voices to be heard. Does it scale? It's a very important question. How can we raise these innovations up to integrate them into existing IT infrastructure, into existing processes? If they don't scale, if they don't integrate, how durable are they? And won't they just vanish with regime change? What's the return on investment, and what is it a return to? So are we comparing the move to social engagement in government on a cost basis, or are we comparing it on an engagement basis, and compared to what? So ROI needs to be understood, and I think that there are compelling cases and new metrics around engagement that really speak loudly for this. What about the digital divide? So many people are not on the internet. Doesn't that give unfair advantage to those who are? How do we integrate these into our current workforce and into our current systems so that, as the minister said, when we receive a complaint and we process it, it translates into a work order, and that work order then results in work that's done. These are questions that many governments are wrestling with. Some governments have answered, and there are answers and there are success stories. But the fact is that at this point, worrying about whether and how social media might be abused or misused, I think it's water over the dam. You have 600 million users on Facebook alone. If you look at it by nations, Facebook is the 3rd largest nation in the world after India and China. This move to social media is ineluctable. It's going to happen. You can't cork it. It's going to develop, and we've seen proof of that, and we see it every day. Let me share with you 4 problems and 4 ways of thinking through some solutions to these problems that are frequently raised for social media, move to government 2.0. Technology may, in fact, help offset the loudest voices problem. Right? Remember, we just mentioned loudest voices as a challenge here. And the reason is that a listening mechanism through technology lets you hear many voices. That's the experience of Mayor Fennell in Brampton. Technology may help mitigate the black hole problem. What happens when a work order request is brought in and citizens want to know what has happened to their information about a pothole or a tree down or a bridge out? Well, technology lets you provide more rapid, smaller pieces of feedback rather than having to wait months to hear what's happened. And that's an advantage. Technology is empowering new groups to mobilize quickly. Issue of digital divide. In fact, we see this around the world. Highly interactive young populations, culturally diverse, engaging, finding each other, and touching and engaging government. And finally, what about the socioeconomic problem? The technology may help mitigate socioeconomic bias. It can be a leveler if everyone can participate online. So some of the concerns have some solutions. There are ways to approach this, but the fact is that this isn't, I think, in our view, a question of government 2.0 alone. It's not simply government that needs more openness and more engagement. There's plenty of industry data that affects people's lives, which also needs openness. There's plenty of commerce, and there are plenty of ways for engagement around institutions of health and education and public safety, so that government 2.0 is best understood, I think, in the context of a move to society 2.0, which all of the institutions like this align, or they all have they all share the same commitment to engagement and to respect and to results. So thinking about government 2.0 on its own is only part of the equation until we begin also opening these other institutions and opportunities. But the fact is also, I think, in all of this talk about engagement and activism, that even in a network world, we all have the right to be left alone. And matters of privacy, of just not, if you don't want to, you don't have to, that preserves a very important right for all people of every nation. So that concludes my comments for today. I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have. I was given a little bit of time. I hope this wasn't too fast, but thank you very much for the opportunity today. I appreciate it.